this morning I woke up and I felt like I was drugged. I didn't wake up till 20 minutes ago. So hopefully that doesn't hit during the middle of this.
Hi, guys. I'm super excited to bring onto the show today Jim Comer. Jim is a living legend in Austin. He is one of the funniest guys I know, a phenomenal speech giver. He is a communications consultant for individuals and corporations, and probably one of the nicest guys you will ever meet in your entire life. I was super thrilled he would agree to come on the Ripple Effect podcast. And when I found out that he came this close to being one of the first writers on Saturday Night Live when it first started, the conversation just got so much more interesting. It's a great dive into who this individual is. He's an amazing guy, one heck of a rippler. He's been a huge supporter of mine for many years, and I can't wait for you to meet him. So let's get started. Welcome to another episode of the Ripple Effect podcast. I am your host, Steve Harper, and with me is an amazing individual. I can't wait for you to get to know Jim Comer. Jim Comer is a communication consultant. He is just an enormously powerful educator of people that are in the speaking business and that are communicating on behalf of their businesses. He's done this for years, but he is also an incredibly talented speaker and one of my heroes. And I am so grateful, Jim, that you decided to come on the Ripple Effect podcast. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing okay. After an introduction like that, I feel like I really have to live up to it. So I'm not sure how that's going to happen, but I'll give it my best.
Well, you never fail to deliver. I've seen you speak a number of times. You are incredibly humorous. You have an amazing way of working in stories to make a bigger point. And I think that's the thing that I admire the most about you is you are a professional in its truest sense. And I've seen a lot of different communication consultants and coaches along the way, but you stand out heads and shoulders above any of them because you are just one of the truest individuals I know. And so I'm so grateful for our friendship.
I really appreciate that. I am a believer in stories. I guess that's because I've had so many crazy things happen to me in my life. And I realize if you can take the real things from your life, the experiences, the ups and the downs and the crazy things, and use those when you're speaking, first of all, you relate to the audience. They begin to know you as well as your company or your product or whatever it is you're speaking about. They have an investment in you. And when they do that, you have a connection with them.
Absolutely. Well, when you and I first met, you and I were talking about this before we got on today, a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about scheduling this, and we were trying to come up with how we originally got to know one another. And I dug deep, believe it or not, 2015, right after my book, 2005.
Right.
That's how long it's been. 2005.
Longer than 2015.
Yeah, the COVID thing has just seemed like that we've just been stuck in the hamster wheel. But 2005, Susan Morrow introduced us. You had spoken, I believe, at an MBX event that I had gone to. I was just enamored with your energy and your enthusiasm. I was a newbie, if you will, to speaking, and very self-confidence was not high. And I was, she suggested me attend this particular meeting that you were presenting at, and you and I decided to go get coffee, a day or two after that, and we just hit it off. You were in the process of promoting the book. I want you to talk about the book that you wrote, about caregiving. It's an enormously powerful book, but the thing that I have always admired about you is that you are true to who you are. You've got the biggest heart. You've got a commitment to helping people. And I think that's why you have been so successful all these years. And although you say you're not, rich and famous, you're certainly famous in the Austin world. That's for sure.
Well, it's funny because after college, I went to Trinity down in San Antonio, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And like so many people who aren't sure what they want to do, I became a teacher. And I went out to Los Angeles, taught in a big junior high, and I did well. I was a good teacher. I mean, I really enjoyed it. They seemed to really like me, connected with the students, and I did it for 2 years and everything was going great. But inside me, I had this need, this insecurity that made me want to be, quote, rich and famous. And so I left this good job. I went to New York City, where there are 8 million people and at least 100,000 of them want to be actors. And I went there to be an actor. I think I had
Wow.
$300. And I got a job at CBS doing stuff during the daytime. And I took acting classes from this great teacher, David LeGrand. He was one of the best. And Bernadette Peters, the great Broadway star.
Yeah. Oh,
she
yeah.
was in one of my classes. That's the kind of people that were there. And I looked around and I realized that I had the least experience of anyone in this class. And I was terrified. And when they would call me, the teacher would call you to go up in the front of the room and do these exercises, which really were actors' studio exercises. They weren't a performance. You were just supposed to do these things he told you to do. And like take a song like Happy Birthday, and you would take it syllable by syllable while you made eye contact with the audience and stayed calm and relaxed. Well, I didn't stay calm and relaxed. I was so terrified. I thought I had to do the best happy birthday ever done. And it would be like you'd be singing the song and looking at the audience and go, happy, because you were looking like a fool, right? But
right.
I started shaking. Sweat poured down my face. My whole cupboard, my shirt was covered with sweat. And I was trying to do a performance instead of just all the teacher was trying to do was to create a strong will in you to do whatever the director said, to increase your commitment to do the acting. And it took me about a year to get that. I was a slow learner. But finally, I began to take in what the acting teacher told me. And I learned a lot from the class and was able to apply it later. And I applied it so much in my speaking coaching career.
Well, you're phenomenal at it, because I have been in a number of your speeches that you've given, and there could be 1,000 people in the room, but it feels like you have that connection to just me. Like you're speaking exclusively to me, which makes you one of the greats that I've seen, and I've seen a lot of great speakers, but you are hands down one of the most personable and sort of the most individualistic when you're delivering your content. It really does bring you in. And I think, when you and I first met over that cup of coffee, I think you and I bonded because you had gone through this process with your parents and the challenges of caregiving. At the time, my mom was still alive and was going through Alzheimer's. So we had a lot in common, and there was a lot that I remember I think we scheduled an hour and we ended up spending 3 hours at the Daily Grind having this just amazing conversation.
I moved to Austin. We're now skipping about 50 years. I moved to Austin in 1996 because my parents had real big health problems. My dad had a stroke. My mother had early Alzheimer's. I was the only sibling alive. My brother had died early in a car crash. So I was out in LA at that time, and I had to come back suddenly and care for both parents. And I went through all these horrible experiences and a long learning curve, and a lot of funny things happened along the way as well. And so eventually I wrote a book about it called When Roles Reverse, a guide to parenting your parents. And it's done well. And a lot of people have related to it because I shared, just like I tell speakers, I shared my vulnerability. I shared my fears. I shared my screw ups. And then what I learned slowly along the way, so that people who are reading it, they can plug into it because they don't know what they're doing either. Most of these people that are caring for their parents. And if they realize that this guy, Jim Comer, the least likely caregiver on the planet, if he can get through it and do it for 14 years, I mean, from 1996 until my mother passed in 2010, that's 14 years of caregiving. We hit every stop along the way, from independent living to assisted living to skilled nursing to hospice. We didn't miss one thing. And I learned how to do it and did the best I could, which is my advice for people, to not be perfect, because you won't be. But the most important thing is to show up, be loving, and do your best.
Yep. I remember that advice. You gave that to me at that point. You just said, be present when you're there. And your only job is to love your mom, in that moment. Doesn't matter how the behavior is perceived or how she responds or reacts, but that was pivotal advice at a time that I really needed to hear it. And so I owe you a debt of gratitude for that.
Wow.
I know at the time you were out doing a lot of speaking in and around the content of the
I,
book. Can you talk a
I
little bit
did.
about that in terms of, those types of audiences, what you learned along the way as you were out promoting the book?
Well, I learned that almost everybody in my audience had a caregiving story of their own. And I was lucky because I really liked my parents. And so
Yeah,
that really helps. If you have a good relationship with your parents, it's much easier to care
sure.
for them because you're building on a basis of love. But many families, that's not so true. And
Yep.
so those kids, if they come through for their parents, have to do it with all sorts of mixed feelings. And it's important for them to acknowledge that to themselves and do the best they can anyway. And
Yep.
try to, at some point, what happens in some cases that families come together again. In the
Hmm.
act of caregiving, the adult child comes to appreciate and love that parent more than ever. And sometimes they reconcile, sometimes
Yep.
they don't. And the
Yep.
other thing I learned over and over again was the problems of different siblings, because one sibling will be the one that ends up doing most of the work, or maybe
Yep.
one or two. But often, there's two or three that aren't doing anything. And
Yep.
yet they give lots of bad advice and they criticize the ones who are really doing something. And
Yeah.
I told the ones who are the real caregivers to pay no attention because they're like drive-by shooters. They're like drive-by caregivers. They're not really there, but they're criticizing. Pay no attention to.
Switching gears a little bit though, this was not your first book, right? So,
No.
your original book had something to do with it. There's this fun story you told me about Jane Pauley on the Today Show. I got to hear this. I mean, our listeners
Well,
definitely are
when I was
curious.
in New York, naturally, because I was always broke, because if you're trying to be an actor, you're
Yep.
taking classes, you're auditioning. But I had to have a lot of different jobs during the day. I painted apartments, I walked dogs, I was a waiter at many restaurants. I was fired as a waiter at many restaurants. And of course, no, I was. I'll never forget this one time. I got a decent job. I was doing pretty well because it was a small menu, and I was happy there. And the manager wanted to hire this beautiful, buxom woman, and he had no spot, so he chose to fire me so he
Oh
could have
no.
this beautiful woman come in, and he had to give me a reason. And he told me I didn't have enough thunder.
Enough thunder.
How do you argue with thunder? I couldn't even make sentences. I didn't know what to say. So all this time I was, trying to be an actor. I had roommates because that was the only way I could, pay the rent. I
Right.
went through a lot of them over the years and, many stories. So I had been writing articles for a local New York weekly magazine. I would write humorous articles for them. And I was, people seemed to like them. And so suddenly this literary agent called me and asked me if I would like to write a book about locks, like locks for the door.
Hmm.
I had done an article about it for the paper. And I said to him, everything I know about locks is in that 1,500 words. I couldn't possibly write a book about locks. The only thing I know enough to write a book about is
Yep.
roommates. And as I said those words, I thought, that
Hmm.
is a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I actually did it without anybody telling me that they were going to publish it. They'd call it on spec. I wrote this 250-page book, a humorous how-to about roommates, and finally finished it, got an agent, got a literary agent. She started sending it around, and finally, after I think 4 years, we sold it to a New York
Wow.
publisher. And unfortunately, my editor, the person who was at the publishing house that loved the book, just as they bought it, she got a better job someplace else, and she left this particular publisher, which left me without someone who's
Any
fighting my
support.
battles
Yep.
for me. And when the book came out, the publisher didn't do anything to help promote it.
Yeah.
But I knew someone who knew someone who knew someone who worked at the Today Show, which at that time was the #1 book-selling place in the country. And
So wait
they
a
got
second. So you technically rippled your way to that connection.
exactly right. Ripple, 3 people away. And I
That's
got
awesome. I love
I
that.
got an interview with this person who was the talent booker for the show. And I thought, what can I do? What can I say to her to help her, want me on the show. And I thought, oh, I know. I will interview Jane Pauley as a potential roommate. And when I told the booker that, her face lit up. And an hour after the interview, I got a call telling me I was on the show. So I was thrilled. And that morning that I actually did the show live, and I'm waiting off stage. Jane Pauley comes over and she spends about 30 seconds with me before the lights go on. And I said, I'm really excited about doing this role play. And she said, oh, I don't think it's a good idea. And then the lights were on. And I'm thinking to myself, you will never, ever be on the Today Show again. This is your shot. And she started doing a regular interview. And I can't believe I did this. I interrupted her and said, Jane, I think we need to do an interview because I want to see if you would be a good roommate. Jane, do you have a well-paying job? And she immediately went with it. And we went on. I asked her things like, could she cook? I mean, all those kinds of things. And finally, I even asked her, Jane, will you be having overnight guests? And she played along with every question. And when I got to the overnight guests, she broke she stopped doing the role play and said, in college, I had that happen to me. I had a roommate in college with overnight guests. And so we went on for 5 minutes, and that's about 3 minutes longer than a typical author gets.
Yeah.
So I left the studio thinking I am going to be rich and famous. Well, that didn't happen, but still, I got that 5 minutes on the Today Show.
Well, I mean, I have got it. You have this interview somewhere that you can.
I do have it.
I have to get a link to it because I got to see it myself.
Oh yeah, it's not bad.
That's awesome. Well, so how long after this situation did you decide, maybe you're going to make a shift into communication in that consulting piece, right?
Well, I all the way along being an actor, I think my third year of being an actor, I earned $3,300 that year as an actor. Now, this is in the 70s, mid 70s. Yeah. That's like $20,000 today. But even if it was $20,000, that's not enough to even pay for an apartment in New York.
Yeah.
So and the thing about that was that $3,300 that I earned that year put me in the top 10% of Actors Equity members in income.
Wow.
That meant that 90% of the actual actors were not making $3,300, not to mention the 50,000 people that weren't in the union trying to get in. Now, if I was a bright person at the time, I would have said, this may not be a good career choice. But if you want to be an actor, you don't even think about this thing. You just are committed to it. So anyway, I had done a lot of things along the way. And one of the things that I think that was the most interesting is I had this wonderfully talented friend who was just brilliant and funny. And I suggested to her that we try to do a comedy act. We do monologues and skits, and maybe we could go around the acting profession where you have to be chosen to be in somebody else's script, and we could create our own breaks.
Create your own, yeah.
And so we did that. We came up with about an hour and 15 minutes of material. And I remember when we got that much material, I said, we need to try this out. Why don't we invite everybody we know? We can use my church's basement and we'll do a show and see how it goes. And we did that. We had about 100 people come to my church and we did all of our material and they really laughed and we were
nice.
Hooked. And we started doing the show. We started doing our act around at clubs around the city. And finally we got to the Improv, which was the big comedy club. They had a once a month talent contest.
Yeah.
And we did our favorite skit and we won the contest.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a big deal. So that meant we got on at the Improv, but we got on at 3:15 in the morning. I'm not kidding you. Once we got on at 3:40. We had
how was the audience at 3:15 and 3:40?
Yeah, not good. That means they're either drunk or they're overdosed on comedy, and it was not a good thing. The only thing that was great about that is that we got a manager, and he ultimately got our material to a new young producer named Lauren Michaels, who in the summer of 1975 was putting together this little show called Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And of course, that meant nothing to us then because it didn't exist. We just knew he was a TV producer and he liked our material. And he called us in to 30 Rock, the same place I had done the Today Show. He called us into his office, and I can still remember walking in. I walked past this guy, John Belushi, and I was really impressed. And he tells us, I want you all to be writers on my new show. I went, really? I said, do you need any more material? We can write more. He said, no, I've got plenty. I want you to have one of the writing slots on my show that's going to start this fall. And we were just thrilled because it was a TV show.
Yeah.
It was going to be money. I remember that we were so excited, we actually took a cab home, which we never did. And
you were splurging.
What?
You were splurging at the time, right?
We splurged on a cab, unheard of. And so he said, we're going to be starting to work in late August. We'll give you a call and let you know when to come in. And this was July, so we were thrilled, and we waited for the call to come. And we waited. And we waited, and no call in August. We got our manager to call. He didn't return the call. We called him. Never heard from Lauren again. And when the show opened that October and became an instant sensation, I'm telling you, I thought that I thought I was going to die. I was so unhappy. And of course, the cast of the show did become rich and famous, which was my goal. And at that point, I was so depressed. I quit everything and I took a job. You're not going to believe this, with the Girl Scouts. And I spent a year there. I have no idea what I did, but I needed something to hide away. Sure. And then I finally decided that I just needed to get rid of acting. And I called my entire address book, 300 people. And I told everybody in there, I'm done, not acting anymore. I want a job, any kind of job, regular job. And nobody believed me. See, that's the deal with actors. People don't believe you when you say you're going to quit, because I had said that several times before. Yeah. And finally, there was this one person I knew who she worked at the world headquarters of the Avon products on Fifth Avenue, right across from the Plaza Hotel. Yeah. Beautiful building. And I called her, and she was in human resources. And she said, now, Jim, if by some miracle, and she said those words, by some miracle, I helped you get a job, you have to stay 6 months or I'll be embarrassed. See, she didn't think I was going to stay either, but I meant it. And about 6 weeks later, she got this memo where it said, wanted wacky idea person to write sales meeting for their sales meeting department. And she referred them to me. They called me for an interview, and I was 33 years old, and I had never had a corporate interview in my life. And so I thought, well, I'm going to wear my favorite suit, and I'll go to the interview, and I'll bring all my writing stuff with me. And so what I wore to the interview was a blue velvet Pierre Cardin suit, not appropriate for the corporate world. But the good news was, this was the sales meeting department. They wanted creative types, so they didn't care about the suit. They wanted to see my writing. So I left them with a lot of the writing, and I got the job. And I went from like no income to 27,000 back when that meant a lot, like 100. Yeah. And suddenly my life changed forever. And I was so fortunate. It was just a great job, and I loved making money for a change, and being around smart people. And I did that for 3 years. Wow. Then I went into special projects. And this is the part that really changed everything for me. They asked me to write a speech for the CEO. And I had never written a speech before. But he was speaking to the district managers who I had been writing sales meetings for 3 years. And I knew these people. They were my mother times 3 times. Yeah. Really, they were just the salt of the earth. And so I wrote him a warm speech with some humor in it, no corporate jargon of any kind. And everybody loved the speech. And then they called me up to the executive floor, 35, where I had never been before, I don't think. And he was going to do a little practice run for the people up there. And I was so excited about seeing this, seeing somebody give my speech, the CEO. and he was unbelievably terrible. He was awful. And I'm watching this and going, oh no, he's going to ruin my speech. Oh gosh. And so I can't believe I did this. After him, he barely knew who I was. And I went up to this man and I said, Mr. Casey, and I don't know where these words came from. I said, I think you could be even better. That's the key words, even better, if we could rehearse a few times. Would you like to rehearse with me? And he had this long pause, and I saw myself being fired right there. He said, well, no one has ever asked me to rehearse before. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I can tell that. He said, he said, I think it's a good idea.
Yep.
Well, I got to rehearse with him, I think 3 times, and I used all my acting class stuff, and he got better. Not great, but noticeably better. He got acceptable. He hit acceptable. And the night of the big speech, which was going to be, it was going to be teleconference to 12 different banquets around the country, he did great. Suddenly,
wow.
I was a speechwriter and a speech coach, and I had been so ever since. All because of that fluke.
Wow. So did you decide at that moment, or was it some time to transition to say, I want to do this on my own? And because you could clearly recognize, I could see this setting up in my mind, recognizing, senior leaders, executives, all needing that kind of guidance and that help. Someone that's there, a friendly face in the room that's going to say, well, you could do it just a little bit better. Would you like that? And who doesn't want to do better, right?
Well, that would have been the logical thing to do. Of course, that would have been but there was a part of my mind that still wanted to be the rich and famous thing. Yeah. And so at this point, I had an apartment that had gone co-op. In other words, I had bought the apartment, and I happened right about this time. And I was able to take the insider price of $25,000 and sell it for almost $100,000, which made me think I was rich. And so I took that money, and stupidly, I quit the job at Avon and went out to LA this time to try to be a TV writer. So no, I didn't do that right away. Wow. I had to have one more big failure before I got it. So I went out to LA, and surprisingly, the world of TV was not waiting for me. I know you're shocked to hear that. And so,
I think it's their miss personally, but whatever.
Anyway, but I started getting calls because the production company from Avon that had worked with me, they realized I could do this coaching. And so I began to getting some jobs writing for executives. And so slowly I began to do it full time, and worked with a lot of interesting, people, CEOs, entrepreneurs. It was terrific experience. And I loved it, because to be able to help someone be better, no matter where they are. I mean, if they're really not good, if you can get them to where they're okay, that's a big jump. And if they're starting out at okay and they want to be wonderful, if you can get them there, that's a big jump. So seeing people really improve and begin to enjoy being themselves in front of a group, I loved it.
Well, and it's such an important gift to give someone, because, this as well as I do, right? It's, it's one of those things that people fear almost more than death. And, when they're faced with having to get up and give a toast at a wedding or a big business meeting, or they decide they want to become a speaker, that it's a scary, scary scenario. And I told people when I brought out the first edition of The Ripple Effect, my friend kicked me into speaking and didn't give me a choice. And I never wanted to be, I was like, no, I'm a writer. I'm not a speaker. And she said, no, you got to get out and promote it. And whether you're, trying to, get your book, recognized and noticed out there, whether you're trying to get your product or service, when it's you, especially as the CEO of the idea, you've got to be really good at authentic communication. And I think you're really good at helping people get there.
Well, the key is the word you just said, authentic. And I talk a lot about individuality, because I think if a speaker will allow their individuality to come through, the thing that makes them wonderful in real life, the thing that their friends and family know and love about them, that person, that warm, interesting, authentic person, if we can bring that with them when they get in front of a group, their chances of succeeding and enjoying themselves are so much better. But as you said, that ultimate F word, fear, gets in the way. Because what happens to most people is they're normal off stage, and the minute they walk on, they start to feel like, oh my God, I've got to be perfect. I can't make a mistake. I've got to be just right. And they sort of getting, their body language changes, their voice changes. They don't make eye contact. They become this mindless automaton instead of themselves. And you've seen it, haven't you? Haven't you seen people
absolutely.
You know and love get up and just be horrible because they're not being themselves? So my job is to help them realize that the way to deal with fear is to be fully yourself and really be the person that your friends and family know and like. And when you do that, then everything changes.
Yeah.
So that's what I work on. And of course, I talk about what I say are the natural resources that everybody's got. Eye contact. There's just nothing more important than eye contact. I was just working with a speaker last week. He's a wonderful entrepreneur who's got this terrific product. I don't want to give his name out, but I've just said he's got a children's bicycle that is lightweight, much easier to use, no training wheels. It's a fantastic product. And he has taken it from selling 14 bikes in 2015 to 48,000 last year, and they were profitable for the first year. He's got this success story that is just amazing. And what we did was we spent a lot of time on his content because he has this up and down story. He had to get rid of all of his savings. He invested everything in more products. His savings, his IRA, he sold his condo, he maxed out his credit cards. He had to even work with loan sharks at one time just to have enough capital to get more bikes. And finally, his story, it's like a movie. It's like an action movie. And the ups and downs are just incredible. And so what I told him last week is after we worked 12 hours in the 4 days before he gave this big speech last week to Metropolitan Breakfast Club. And we worked on story, and it really was like a movie. And he didn't have that much time to work on delivery. So I said, just make eye contact. I said, find the faces in the audience that are feeding you, the ones that are nodding and smiling, the ones who are with you. Give the whole speech to the friendly faces, and everybody around them will think you're talking to them. And it worked. He was terrific. And the audience was like rooting for him all the way through. And he made great eye contact. So that to me is number one. If you can really connect with them and see them reacting to you, it gives you the energy to move through the speech as yourself.
Yep. Well, I will tell you, one of the bits of advice that you gave me, I had been speaking probably maybe 2 or 3 years, and you and I had gotten together, and you were so gracious with your time because we were meeting on something completely unrelated, and I happened to mention, you asked me how it was going, and I said, well, it's going, and you knew that I had worked with a local speaking coach that I had met before I met you. And, you were not trying to, sell me on coming to your service or to do anything. What I really respected was, well, how can I help you? Like right now, it's like, right here in this instant, what can I do to create that positive ripple for you? And I just remember telling you, I felt like it was an out of body experience. Like I really struggled with my confidence. And you asked me how I was preparing and what I was showing and what I was doing. And you said, I remember talking to you, and you have a knack for telling a story, Steve. You need to tell the story, and you need to be able to do it in a way that it comes across as authentic. It doesn't have to be perfectly polished or rehearsed, but you just have to deliver it in a way that gets people's attention. And then I remember that key. He said, you said actually at the time, it's like, just like you say, when you get out there and you're creating a positive ripple of connection, it's that eye contact. It's recognizing that person and holding space for them. And it was a game changer for me at the time, because I went away from my notes. I went away from prepared presentations and feeling like I had to go through, this really prepared, really situated effort, right, to do it, which felt painful at the time and inauthentic. And you gave me that freedom to expand beyond that, and I'm certainly not the greatest speaker in the world. I have lots of room for improvement. But the thing that I have gotten back over and over again is people feel like I really connect with them individually. And that is a lesson I learned.
That's the ball game.
Yeah.
If you connect with them individually, that is it. I always tell people that an audience is going to leave with one of three feelings about the speaker. They either have a positive feeling, a negative feeling, or blah. We don't want blah. We don't want negative. So my thing is, I tell speakers to pick the one or two things that you most want the audience to know. Those 2 points. Don't try to make a bunch of points, because audience can't remember more than two. Most of them can't remember two. But anyway, I'm telling you, I say pick the key points and wrap stories and examples and word pictures around those points and drive those home. And if you do that, then you've got a good chance that they're going to have a good feeling about you. I mean, that's it. I mean, these people that get up and try to make 5, 6, 7, 8 points, they're just nuts. They may have 5 or 6 points, but no audience can remember that. They leave blurred out by all these points. You just want to get a couple of things across. And if you can do that and let them like you, it doesn't get any better than that. I tell people that if they remember 1 point and like you,
that's a win.
That's like hitting a double. And if they remember 2 points and like you, that's a grand slam homer, like the Atlanta Braves did a couple of nights ago. This doesn't get better. If they remember 2 things and like you, that is as good as it gets.
Yeah, I will tell you, I remember you said something similar to me about if people walk away, then you've made an impact on them and they will remember it, and you'll not even recognize it coming. You'll see them down the road somewhere at another event, or, out in public, and they'll, you know what, your speech did this for me. I'm so grateful that you kind of reshifted my priority and my focus to push me on down the road. I just learned so much from you. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to tell people how to learn about the programs that you have, how they could work with you one-on-one. And I know you do a number of, workshops and in public events. I know COVID's changed that a little bit, but
I haven't done many public events the last year and a half, but that's about to change. As we go into the New Year's, I'm going to do presentation skills workshops. I take 6 to 10 people, and we spend 8 hours, 4 hours one day, or usually in the evening, 4 hours the next evening, and we work on their own individual skills. That each of them get videos of little short exercises that we do, so they can actually see themselves change as they go through the 8 hours. And I keep the size of the group small, so I get lots of individual time with each person to give them instant feedback, and then they apply that feedback in the next exercise. And you can actually see the changes, and they can feel the changes over 8 hours. I love to do that.
That's beautiful.
And that allows people that couldn't afford one-on-one coaching to get the same idea. And of course, I love to work with executives who actually can afford individual coaching, like the guy that I was just talking about that had the bicycle. I mean, we've spent a lot of time together, but he has completely turned around his presentations now. He's now got, as I said, he's got a movie almost of his success.
That's
and
great.
The way that people can get in touch with me, I've got a website, Comer Communications with an S, COMER communications.com. And then you can always give me a call at my home office, 512-949-9281. And they always say repeat it. So 512-949-9281.
Awesome. Well, Jim, there was so much I wanted to talk to you about, but I want to be respectful of your time. I would love to have you come back, because there's other things I want to explore with you, but this was just amazing. This time was just phenomenal.
It was lots of fun.
I'm so grateful.
You took me back to New York in the 70s. Oh my.
New York to California, back to Austin.
That's right. I've hit both coasts in the middle.
I mean, we covered it. We did cover it. And Jane Pauley. And, I actually think I'm going to make it a personal mission of mine to find a way to get Lauren Michaels to call you.
Oh, I would love that.
I'm no promises, but I'm going to do my level-headed best. I know a few people that are connected to him, and I think that would be the ultimate ripple to say, you owe this guy a call back.
Yes, Lauren does owe me from 1975. He does indeed.
Yeah. So it's,
I look at that and go on. And I think some of those people had tragic lives from those, like John Belushi, who I walked past in the office. Well, we know what happened to him. And a drug overdose. Some of them had great success, and some of them had tragedy. And you just never know how life's going to be. I know that the most important thing I ever did in my life was come back to Texas and care for my parents for those 14
Yep.
years. There's no question that was the most important
Absolutely.
thing I did. And it was not about getting rich and famous. It was doing what I was supposed to do. And then by accident, the book came out of that, which helped other people. So I know that was my real mission in life. And the other was just all the things I did on the way to that most important thing.
Well, when I think of positive ripplers, you are high on my list, sir, because you create positive
Okay.
ripples, not only for the clients that you work with and serve, but for anybody that is blessed to know you as a friend, just, in the different groups that you're a part of. You're just an unbelievable individual and one of the good guys. And I'm so grateful that you have kept me as a friend all these years, and
Oh, thank you,
so
Steve.
grateful you came on
You
to the
sure you
Ripple
don't want to be my
podcast.
personal manager? I could really use you. No
Hey,
question about it.
I could be persuaded to be that. I mean, if I get the Lorne Michaels deal for you, then we are
Oh, I would
definitely
love that. That'd be real nice.
we will definitely be talking for sure.
Thank you.
Well,
I've really enjoyed this.
this was fantastic, Jim. Thank you so much for coming on the Ripple Effect podcast. You go have a fantastic day and ripple on.
Thank you.